For an architect, a blank sheet of paper is not an empty space. It is a universe of possibility. It is the silent, humming potential of form, light, structure, and space waiting to be coaxed into existence. My name is Sebastian Vance. For as long as I can remember, my life has been a quiet, intense conversation with those possibilities. I don't just design buildings, I try to create experiences. I believe that a building should have a soul, that it should speak a language without words to the people who move through it. My small firm, Vance Design, had built a modest but respected reputation for integrity, sustainability, and a kind of quiet innovation. But every architect, no matter how small their studio, has a secret, grand ambition, a dream project, a cathedral. My cathedral was the new Ethelgard Museum of Modern Art. It was the most prestigious architectural competition the city had seen in a century, a project that would define the city's skyline for the next 200 years. It was a chance to create a new cultural heart for the metropolis, a landmark that would stand as a testament to our era. For 6 grueling months, I barely slept. My small team and I lived in our studio, fueled by stale coffee and a burning collective passion. I poured every ounce of my creativity, my knowledge of materials, and my soul into a single audacious design. My vision was a building that was itself a piece of sculpture, a dynamic, flowing interplay of sweeping, bone-white concrete and vast crystalline glass. Its crowning jewel, its very soul, was to be the grand atrium, a massive, vaulted ceiling composed of intricately layered, triple laminated glass panels, engineered to capture the changing light of the day and bathe the grand entrance hall in a soft, ever-shifting, ethereal glow. My design wasn't just a building. It was a love letter to light and form. And then the impossible happened. Against all odds, I won. My small, unknown firm, the David in a field of Goliaths, beat out the international corporate giants. The announcement was the single greatest moment of my professional life. But a design, no matter how beautiful, is just a dream on paper. To turn a dream into a towering reality of concrete and glass, you need a partner. You need a developer. And the developer the city had chosen to partner with was the most powerful and the most feared man in real estate, Alaric Thorne. Thorne was a force of nature, a man who didn't just build buildings, but entire skylines. He was a titan of industry, impeccably dressed, brutally charismatic, and moved through the world with the predatory grace of a great white shark. In our first meeting, held in his penthouse office that overlooked the very city he sought to dominate, he spread my blueprints across his vast marble desk. "Mr. Vance," he said, his voice a low, commanding rumble that seemed to vibrate in my chest. "This is not just a building. This is a statement. This is poetry in concrete. I build monuments. You dream them. Together," he said, looking me directly in the eye, "we will give this city a new icon that will make the world take notice." He spoke my language. He understood the vision, the ambition, the art. He didn't talk about square footage or profit margins. He talked about legacy. I was thrilled, almost giddy. I thought I had found the perfect partner, a man with the power, the resources, and the apparent appreciation for design to bring my dream to life without compromise. For the first year, through the complex stages of site preparation and foundational work, it was a perfect collaboration. We worked side by side, refining the technical plans, choosing the foundational materials. He respected my vision, and I respected his shrewd, decisive business acumen. The groundbreaking ceremony was a major media event. I stood beside Thorne, smiling for the cameras, 2 partners on the verge of creating something truly magnificent. I was a fool. I was the lamb, admiring the architectural beauty of the slaughterhouse I was being led into. The change began slowly, insidiously, once the foundations were poured and the massive steel skeleton began its majestic rise into the sky. It started with a phrase, a piece of corporate jargon I grew to despise more than any other. value engineering. It's a sanitized, intelligent-sounding term, but what it really means is finding cheaper and almost always inferior ways to do things to maximize profit. The first compromise was the solid, book-matched slabs of Italian travertine marble I had specified for the grand, sweeping staircase in the atrium. It was meant to be the anchor, the solid earth to the atrium's ethereal light. Sebastian, Thorne said one afternoon. His tone is reasonable and smooth as polished stone, his smile disarming. My suppliers in Asia have found a composite material that has a 95% visual match to your travertine. It's a marvel of modern engineering, and it comes in at 30% of the cost. The public, the critics, they will never know the difference. It's just smart business. I fought him. I argued passionately that the difference wasn't just visual. It was in the feel, the weight, the way it would absorb sound, the way it would wear and gain a patina over 100 years. I lost. The cheap, soulless composite was ordered. Next, it was the custom-milled wide-plank white oak I had chosen for the gallery floors, selected for its warmth and acoustic properties. It was replaced with a high-grade commercial laminate that had a repeating printed wood grain pattern. Then it was the bespoke solid bronze fittings and door handles I had designed, which were replaced with cheap plated aluminum that would feel cold and hollow to the touch. Each change was a small cut, a tiny, painful betrayal of the original holistic vision. I was in a constant draining state of war, fighting to protect the soul of my own creation from the man who was supposed to be its champion. But Thorne was a master of corporate attrition. He would wear me down in endless meetings, drown me in fabricated budget reports, and masterfully frame my artistic objections as being financially irresponsible, divorced from reality, and a danger to the project's strict timeline. In front of the city's oversight committee, he made me look like a difficult, precious artist, while he played the role of the responsible pragmatist. The final battle, the one that broke me, the one that shattered my spirit, was over the very heart and soul of the building itself, the custom glass for the grand atrium. My design, my calculations, my entire concept was incredibly specific. It required a custom fabricated, triple laminated glass with a near zero iron content and a specific, subtle, multi-layered UV and thermal coating. This wasn't just for aesthetics, it was a fundamental structural and environmental necessity. The low iron glass would be incredibly, almost invisibly clear, allowing for pure, untainted light to fill the space. The triple lamination provided the necessary strength against the significant wind shear the curved structure would face. And the UV and thermal coatings were crucial to protect the priceless modern art within from sun damage, while also preventing the vast atrium from becoming an unbearable greenhouse in the summer months. It was expensive, yes, but it was the single most important, most defining element in the entire design. Thorne called me into his on-site office, a dusty trailer that was a stark contrast to his opulent headquarters. He had a new sample of glass on his desk. It looked similar at a glance, but I knew instantly it was wrong. It felt different, thinner. And as I held it up to the light, I could see a slight, almost imperceptible greenish tint at the polished edges, the telltale sign of cheap, high iron glass.
My European supplier has unfortunately run into some unavoidable production issues, he said, not even trying to sound convincing. But I have used my connections to find a fantastic alternative from a new supplier. It meets all the basic safety specifications and, he said, leaning in as if sharing a wonderful secret, it will save us nearly 2 million euros and cut the installation time by 6 weeks. It's a win-win. I felt a surge of cold fury. I knew instantly it was a lie. This was cheap, standard-tempered architectural glass. It probably didn't have the proper multi-layered coatings. Its structural integrity under stress would be questionable. It would turn my beautiful, light-filled cathedral into a sweltering, glaring, green-tinted liability. "Absolutely not, Alaric," I said, my voice shaking with a mixture of anger and utter exhaustion. "This is not what I designed. This is not safe. It will not perform correctly. It will ruin the building. My name is on those blueprints, my firm's name. I will not approve this substitution. I will go to the city committee myself." Thorne stopped smiling. For the first time, I saw the true cold predator behind the charismatic man. His eyes went dead and flat. "Your name is on the blueprints, Sebastian," he said softly, his voice a chilling, menacing whisper. "But my name is on the checks. My company is the one with the €100 million liability insurance. You are a contract architect. In the eyes of the law, you are my employee for the duration of this project. You have a small firm, a handful of employees, a professional reputation that is, as of this moment, entirely and completely dependent on the successful completion of this museum." He stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the rising steel skeleton of my dream. "If you refuse to sign off on this change order," he continued, his back to me, "I will declare you in breach of contract. I will use my army of lawyers to sue your small firm into absolute oblivion for the delay of project damages, which will amount to millions. I will personally see to it that your name is dragged through the mud in every trade publication in the country. I will have you blacklisted. You will never build anything more significant than a garden shed in this city ever again. Your dream of being a great architect dies right here in this dusty trailer." He turned around and walked back to the desk, pushing a pen across its surface towards me. "Or," he said, his voice now calm and reasonable again, "you sign the form, acknowledge that this new material is an acceptable and functionally equivalent substitute. You take your generous final payment, and you get to see your beautiful museum get built. You'll still be a star, Sebastian. No one will ever know." He had me. It was a perfect, brutal checkmate. It was a choice between the complete and utter annihilation of my career, my firm, and my employees' livelihoods, and the slow, painful, and secret corruption of my soul. I thought of my team, the young architects who looked up to me, who depended on me for their paychecks. I thought of the years of work, and with a hand that felt like it was carved from lead, I picked up the pen and signed the paper. I signed my name to a grotesque lie. I had sold the soul of my own building to save my own skin. A week later, once the contracts for the cheap glass had been signed and the shipment was on its way, my services were terminated. The official reason was project restructuring to streamline the final completion phase. I was thanked for my visionary design and politely shown the door. I was cast out from my own cathedral. I was forced to watch from a distance as my compromised, beautiful, broken dream rose into the sky without me. My name was still on the project, a permanent public stain on a building I no longer recognized as my own. My reputation in the tight-knit architectural community was ruined. The whispers followed me everywhere. Sebastian Vance, the brilliant young designer who had sold out, who had compromised his vision for a paycheck. I was a pariah. For months, I was a ghost. I fell into a deep, dark depression, the bitterness of Thorne's betrayal a constant metallic taste in my mouth. I couldn't even look at the rising silhouette of the museum on the city skyline. It was a monument to my failure, my cowardice. The turning point came late one night in the sterile quiet of my home office. I was surrounded by the ghosts of the project, my original sketches, my intricate models, my reams of calculations. Out of a sense of morbid curiosity, a strange desire to punish myself further, I pulled up the original complex 3D models of the atrium. I decided to run an old simulation, a powerful solar analysis program I had used to design the original high-specification glass. It was a program that could map with incredible precision how light and heat would interact with the structure at any given time on any given day of the year. I painstakingly plugged in the new inferior specifications of the glass Thorne had used. its higher iron content, its different refractive index, its lack of proper thermal coating. I ran the simulation. The results were mostly as I had expected: significantly higher heat gain in the summer, a noticeable color distortion in the light. But then I saw it, an anomaly, a single focused point of intense light and heat that appeared for a very specific, very short period of time. My heart began to beat faster. This was new. This was unexpected. I ran the simulation again, but this time I set the date to a specific day, June 21st, the summer solstice, the longest day of the year. The very day that I had just seen on a news report was the date the city had chosen for the museum's grand opening gala. And there it was. My God, it was beautiful. It was a weapon. Because of the precise, sweeping curvature of the atrium roof and the inferior, highly refractive index of the cheap glass panels, on the summer solstice, and only on the summer solstice, for a period of exactly 15 minutes around solar noon, the entire massive glass structure would act as a giant, imperfect, and very powerful magnifying glass. It would gather the intense midday sun and focus it into a single, searingly bright and intensely hot beam of light, about 2 meters in diameter, directly onto the center of the main, towering marble wall of the atrium. The very wall where I knew, with an architect's unshakable certainty, Thorne would place a massive, ostentatious bronze plaque bearing his own name as the museum's visionary benefactor. The cheap glass wouldn't just create a bright spot. My simulation showed it would create a distorted, shimmering, and almost sickeningly ugly focal point. The inherent greenish tint of the glass would be concentrated into a putrid, swampy yellow-green circle of light. The heat would be so intense, focused on that one spot, that it would likely cause the cheap composite marble on that one spot to discolor over time, creating a permanent, ugly scar. It wouldn't burn the building down. It was a non-destructive but exquisitely humiliating design flaw. The building itself, on the day of its birth, would use the power of the sun to point a giant, ugly, undeniable finger at its own flawed heart. In that moment, the broken, defeated architect died, and a cold, methodical avenger was born. Thorne had forced me to sign my name to a lie. Now I would let the immutable laws of physics and the brilliant light of the sun expose his. My plan was simple, but it had to be executed with the precision of a surgeon. I couldn't let this be a random, bizarre accident that people might miss or dismiss. The right people had to see it, and they had to understand exactly what they were seeing. There is a legendary, almost mythical architectural critic in Europe, a woman named Geneviève Dubois. She is known for her brutal, unflinching honesty and her terrifyingly sharp technical eye. They call her the vulture, because she feeds on the carcasses of failed, pretentious, and dishonest buildings. She is feared by every architect on the continent, but she is respected because she is always, always right. I wrote an anonymous letter to her Paris office on high-quality, untraceable paper. I didn't make accusations. I didn't whine about my fate. I simply wrote, Madame Dubois, if you wish to see the true, unvarnished quality of Alaric Thorne's latest work, I suggest you stand in the center of the Ethelgard Museum's grand atrium at precisely 12:15 p.m. on the day of the opening. I advise you to pay close attention to the main benefactor's wall. The building itself has a story to tell, and it speaks with the light of the sun. A friend of architectural honesty. The night of the grand opening gala was the biggest social and cultural event of the year. The city's elite were all there, a glittering sea of tuxedos and evening gowns, sipping champagne and making deals under the soaring, flawed glass roof of my compromised dream. I was there too.
I had bought a single expensive ticket like any other member of the public. I stood in the shadows near the back, an anonymous ghost at the feast, watching Alaric Thorne hold court. He was magnificent, a conquering king in his new castle, accepting fawning congratulations, his chest puffed out with pride. He gave a long, self-congratulatory speech from the grand fake marble staircase. He spoke of his unwavering commitment to quality and his vision for a new urban renaissance. He never mentioned my name once. At the grand finale of his speech, curtains were dramatically pulled back to unveil the massive, polished bronze plaque on the main wall. It read, "The Ethelgard Museum, a monument to the civic vision and unwavering dedication of Alaric Thorne." The crowd applauded politely. The time was 12:10 p.m. I saw her then, Geneviève Dubois, the vulture, standing near the center of the room, looking not at Thorne, but at her watch with a curious, predatory expression. And then, just as the simulation had predicted, it began. As the sun reached its zenith in the clear solstice sky, a single bright beam of light appeared on the polished floor. It was hazy at first, then it grew in intensity and clarity. The crowd murmured, some thinking it was some kind of planned, dramatic light show. The beam began to move, slowly, silently, inexorably, across the polished floor, directly towards the main wall. It climbed the marble wall, and then it found its target. It settled, with cosmic, undeniable precision, directly over Thorne's bronze plaque. The effect was instantaneous and horrifyingly perfect. The beam was not the beautiful, ethereal, room-filling glow that I had designed. It was a distorted, shimmering, and sickly yellow-green circle of concentrated, ugly glare. It made the polished bronze look cheap and tarnished. It was a spotlight of pure, unadulterated, architectural failure. A loud, clear, and surgically precise voice cut through the confused silence of the crowd. It was Geneviève Dubois. She called out, "Mr. Thorne, can you please explain this rather significant solar convergence phenomenon? It appears your atrium's glazing is creating a powerful and rather unattractive focal point. This is a common and, quite frankly, amateurish flaw in poorly specified low-quality glass. Surely your architects simulated for this contingency." The blood drained from Alaric Thorne's face. He stared at the ugly beam of light that was publicly defiling his name, then at the world-renowned critic who had just publicly executed him. He had no answer. He couldn't blame me. I was gone. He couldn't blame the glass. He had signed off on it. He was a businessman who didn't understand the science of the prison he had built for himself. The lie I had been forced to sign my name to was now being broadcast to the entire world by the sun itself. The aftermath was a glorious cascading collapse. Dubois' review, published online the next day, was a masterpiece of journalistic destruction. She didn't just critique the building, she eviscerated it, starting with the now infamous, humiliating solar flaw that perfectly symbolizes the project's cheap, compromised, and dishonest heart. Her article, which went viral globally, triggered a full, independent structural and financial investigation by the city. They found every corner Thorne had cut. They found the cheap composite marble, the laminate floors, the fake bronze fittings. They discovered that the atrium glass was not up to code for wind shear resistance, a massive public safety hazard. The entire museum had to be closed indefinitely for a massive, multi-million-euro refit. Thorne's empire, built on a carefully crafted reputation of quality, crumbled. He was sued by the city for breach of contract and negligence. He was sued by his investors for fraud. He was ruined, a pariah, a walking symbol of corporate greed. 6 months later, a new museum committee, under the direct authority of the mayor's office, called me. They offered me a contract to oversee the complete refit of the Ethelgard Museum, to fix it, to restore it, piece by painful piece, to my original uncompromised vision with the proper glass, the proper marble, the proper soul. I took the job, and the first thing I did was walk into the empty, silent grand atrium. I stood there for a long time, in the quiet, dusty light. Thorne had tried to force me to build a monument to his ego. Instead, I had let him build a monument to his own greed, and then simply waited for the sun, the ultimate source of all truth and light, to come out and show the entire world his lie.